Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Amanda Newman, and I teach history at the Upper School of Ramaz. I'm also a graduate of Ramaz, class of 1984. I have the great pleasure to introduce today's program, a conversation between Rabbi Lookstein and Israeli politician and human rights activist Natan Sharansky. Mr. Sharansky became famous in the 1970s and 80s as the face of the Soviet Jewish dissident movement. He spent 9 years in Soviet prison camps until in 1986 he was released and went to live in Israel with his wife Avital. I must admit that this introduction touches me in a very personal way. When I was a student at Ramaz in the 1980s, the Soviet Jewry movement was a constant and vital presence in all our lives. This was in great part because of the passion and leadership of Rabbi Lookstein. We marched by the thousands to rallies at the United Nations, we held vigils, we protested outside the Soviet mission to the UN. In fact, Rabbi Lookstein would often take us to say shacharit outside the Soviet mission, and when we continued to do this, despite a restraining order against us, we were arrested by the police. It's still a vivid memory for me. In those days, there were many people that we came to recognize as leaders of the struggle to free Soviet Jews, but the most famous of these people, the iconic face, was that of Natan Sharansky. He became the eloquent spokesman for so many people who were not allowed to freely express their views. Perhaps his most stirring speech was the one he gave at his trial in 1978, after he had been sentenced to 13 years of forced labor. My family, as well as many others, read it at our Passover Seder every year until Natan Sharansky was released. Permit me to read the end of it to you now. For more than 2,000 years, the Jewish people, my people, have been dispersed. But wherever they are, wherever Jews are found, every year they have repeated, next year in Jerusalem. Now, when I am further than ever from my people, from Avital, facing many arduous years of imprisonment, I say, turning to my people, my Avital, next year in Jerusalem. Now I turn to you, the court, who were required to confirm a predetermined sentence. To you, I have nothing to say. It is my great honor now to introduce Natan Sharansky in conversation with our Principal Emeritus, Rabbi Haskel Lookstein, a conversation that began in Moscow on Shemini Atzeret night in 1975.
I'm going to pick it up. I'm going to start from Shemini Atzeret in 1975. Audrey and I had arrived for our second visit to the Soviet Union, first in Leningrad and then in Riga, and then we came to Moscow. We came right before Sukkot, and we arrived in Moscow 2 days before Shemini Atzeret. Friday night, Shemini Atzeret, we walked into the home of Vladimir and Masha Slepak, and that's where we met Natan Sharansky. I'm going to let him pick up from that conversation and that experience that night. Please, Natan.
Well, Haskel and Audrey, glad to see you. Everybody remembers things which are important to him. You remember that it was Shemini Atzeret. I remember that when I saw both of you, I said, oh my God, he's also shorter than his wife, like me. So that's why it was very memorable. But then, because of my activity, and I was like an official spokesman of our movement, so I met with many foreign tourists, Jewish tourists who were coming to establish connection with us. What I remember about Rav Lookstein, that he said that he came here to also to visit us, but also to give a lecture. And what was this lecture about? This lecture was about Jewish heroism compared to the Greek and Romanian or Roman heroes, And those heroes had to be strong, but spoiled people. And Jewish heroes, they are all weak, but in fact, they have very strong spirit. And then he, of course, made this comparison. Well, it was very interesting. But then Rav Lookstein said that he wants, I said it's very important what you're telling. So he said he wants to speak to all the Jews in Moscow, refuseniks, activists. I said, you cannot speak to all of them because we have groups who will not talk to one another. So, oh, I know this problem very well. So we will go to all these groups. And we went to him at least to 3 different groups on Shabbat. And what was a new thing for me that on Shabbat you're not supposed to drive. So we couldn't take a taxi. And I had to sleep mile after mile after mile. And in the middle of it, suddenly Rav Lookstein stops and starts praying Mincha. And everybody looks at this strange man in the center of Moscow. And I'm thinking, oh my God, that's what Shabbat means, that you have to look ridiculous to all these people and you have to go by foot these hours after hours. So that was my first memories about Rav Lookstein. Also for the first time I heard Bracha Natilat Yadayim, Motzlechem. So it was very educational. I think those who were studying in Ramaz know what a nudnik he can be, and it was very interesting. At the same time, you had all these learning materials about Natilat Yadayim and lectures about courage of Jewish heroes. And then Rav Lookstein forced, I think, generations of young poor kids in Ramaz to suffer for us, and I became his slave. Wherever he asked me to speak to another Jewish group that he's bringing from New York, and before Corona he was doing it, I think, every 2 weeks, I had to speak to them. So what can I do?
Do you know why I love Natan Sharansky so much? It's not just because he is the greatest hero that I have ever seen in my life in his fight against the whole Soviet Union, not only for Jewish emigration at a time when Jews couldn't get out, but also for the dissidents who wanted human rights. He combined both. And his heroism, though, was even greater when he came to Israel, got into politics, and became a minister in 4 different Israel governments. And twice he resigned his ministry over principle because he disagreed with the prime minister in whose party or his coalition he was. Once it was with Netanyahu.
No. It was with Ehud Barak, and it was with Ariel Sharon.
Ehud Barak over the issue of negotiating over the Golan Heights, and the other time was with Arik Sharon, Alav HaShalom, over the issue of drawing back from Gaza. I've never heard of a minister who resigned. It's one story to be in the gulag and be powerless and be strong, and we're going to hear about that in a minute. But it's quite another to be powerful and give up power and all of the accoutrements of ministry over principle and say, I can't stay in this government. But that's not the only reason that I love him. I love him because he's the only person who remembers a lecture of mine from 1975. People don't even remember what I say an hour later. And here this man, my God, 45 years later, he's repeating this lecture. Kol hakavod. It shows what a wonderful, wonderful friend.
Well, Haskel, it's very simple. I also don't remember what I heard 2 weeks ago. That's already a sign of our respectable age. But I have to say, why your lecture was so important. You know, we were absolutely assimilated Soviet Jews. And then we discovered, after 1967, we discovered for ourselves, by way through the literature which the American Jews were bringing to us, we discovered that if you only want, we can be part of such a magnificent history and part of such unique people from all the world. These Jewish people are coming and saying, oh, your father is from Odessa and my father is from Odessa. We want to help you. And of course, the state of Israel. And the fact that we were speaking, we were not afraid to speak against authorities and to do everything to fight for our rights and the rights of other people, is also because we discovered this historical connection, and that we want to be like, we want to feel ourselves continuing this exodus from Egypt. We want to feel ourselves continuing this struggle of Maccabees. We want to be like those soldiers near the Kotel 1967 who were exactly my age. They think, my God, in this age, we can already do such great things. And that's why when you were coming and helping us to feel this connection with our history was so powerful. That's why I remembered it then, and I can't even say how many times I was going back to this when I was in prison, because that was the main weapon against KGB in prison. You're absolutely alone, you're isolated from all the world. KGB says that you're abandoned by everybody. And you try to remember every meeting with every American Jewish tourist. You try to think what this Jewish tourist is doing now. Of course, he is not believing to all this, what KGB says. And you try to think what your wife is doing at this moment in Israel, and how all those journalists that you are meeting with them. And that's what helps you to build your own world. And in that world, it was KGB tries to create for you one type of a picture, and you, being absolutely isolated, have another picture. What was good, that then when I was released, I found out that the picture which I had in my mind of the world Jewry supporting us and fighting was much more true to the, well, real than the KGB, the picture of KGB.
Natan, I know that you are disappointed that in America today, we don't remember the Soviet Jewry movement. And I wonder if you want to comment a little bit on that, especially to our students in the upper school who don't know what Amanda Newman knows and don't have that history. What should they be remembering in that Soviet Jewry movement and beyond it?
Okay, well, I am not disappointed that many people don't remember our names. Who cares? After all, the world is changing. There are new heroes, new events. But I'm really disappointed that the parents of this young generation of Jews, who were so devoted to the struggle, who spent year after year after year in bar mitzvah trainings, in demonstrations, in writing to their senators, in going to the so-called tourist trips to meet refuseniks. So it was like 25, 30 years struggle. These people were, this struggle of these American Jews was the most important condition of our success. We could not even survive in one day that struggle in the Soviet Union if it was not the struggle of all the Jews of the world. And then these parents didn't tell to their children about themselves, forget about us, about their own struggle. You know, later as a head of Jewish agency and many other positions, I was dealing all the time with the fact how to strengthen Jewish identity. And you find that you really have to make young Jews personally excited about our history. So we try to make them excited with the history of King David and with the history of Maccabees, and with history of Ben Gurion. And here, you American Jews have such a unique story of your own victory over the worst dictatorship in the world. And the result of this victory, 2 million Jews are now in freedom, and 1 million Jews moved to Israel. It changed all the Jewish history. And you don't tell them about your own story. That is the best way to make them feel that it is their history, that it's part of their family. And that's what's so disappointing for me, that so many times some American parent comes to me with his child or grandchild and says, oh, I want to have a picture with you because then I will tell to my grandchild about your story. I say, wait a minute, but does your grandchild knows about your demonstrations, about your visits to us in Moscow? He said, no, it's not interesting for them. But did you tell? No, I didn't tell. So that is the problem. I'm really disappointed that having such a powerful weapon of strengthening identity of your own children and grandchildren, that's to tell about the story of your American Jewry struggle and your victory, and you're not using it.
You see, what our kids don't understand is that movement did more for us than it did for the Soviet Jews. It gave us a tremendous boost to our own Jewish identity. We had something to fight for. And when we were fighting for Soviet Jewry, we were at the same time inspiring ourselves. And that's what happened to Audrey and me when we came to the Soviet Union. In our first and second trips in 1972 and 75, it changed us. And we were then able to change KJ and Ramaz. Amanda Newman would not be Amanda Newman if she hadn't marched down Fifth Avenue in front of the world, 100,000 strong, screaming, "We are Jews, we couldn't be prouder, and if you can't hear us, we'll yell a little louder. We are Jews," and that kind of stuff. I remember when I was a kid in the 1930s and 40s, we would never have dreamt of walking outside like that. The kippah sruga that I'm wearing is in a large sense due to that whole struggle for Soviet Jewry, where we came out publicly and said we're proud of our Jewishness and we want to help our brothers and sisters in the Soviet Union to become free. I'd like to ask you, I know you link freedom and identity. This is part of your whole message. Can you say a few words to our kids and the many people, parents and grandparents who are looking in, about freedom and identity?
Okay. I believe that every person has two very deep desires. One, everybody wants to be free, meaning that nobody will tell me what really to think and what to say. And the other, to belong to something bigger than your own physical life, to belong to the group of people of your faith, or to belong to the group of people who share the same history, or something else. And some people really feel that there is contradiction. Or you are a universalist, or you are a particularist, or you want a better future for all the world, and then start thinking, being concerned about all the world, or you're only concerned about your own tribe. And I discovered in my own life how it is deeply dependent. I was lucky. I was deprived of freedom and deprived of identity. And then I discovered both of them. How? In Soviet Union, I grew as absolutely assimilated Soviet Jew. And absolutely assimilated, it's not like in America that after bar mitzvah you don't come back to synagogue. Absolutely assimilated, meaning that we didn't know what bar mitzvah is. We didn't know what brit milah is. We didn't know what is Pesach, what is Purim. We didn't know one word in Hebrew, and there was no way to go on to learn this Hebrew. We didn't know what is synagogue. There was no place to learn about prayers. I was the third generation, or second, beginning of the third, of the absolutely assimilated Soviet Jews, because that was the policy of Soviet Union. The only Jewish thing which we had was anti-Semitism, a lot of anti-Semitism. And the message of the parents is, because you're a Jew, you must be the best in physics or mathematics, or in chess or in music, or something, because that is the way how we survive. On the other hand, we had absolutely no freedom. We knew from the age of 5 that all what you're doing publicly, what you're saying publicly, it's all lies, but the truth you can say only in your family. You know? And I was 5 years old when Stalin died. Stalin was the big dictator of Soviet Union. And my father explains to me, 5 years old, that it's a very good day for Jews, because Stalin was very dangerous for Jews. But so I should remember all my life that miracle happened. Stalin died just in the time of persecutions. But that I should never say anything to anybody, that I should do what everybody does. And I go back to my kindergarten and I cry together with all the children about death of Stalin. And I'm singing the songs about son of all the people, Stalin. And I have no idea, I cannot know who of these children really cries and who cries like me, because I have to pretend. That's typical life of Soviet people. And you think, but maybe you can fight against it for freedom of thought, for your rights to do what you believe in. You don't even think about it, because there are no values in your life except from physical survival. And then, when after 1967, when you see that all the world looks on you and says, how you Jews did it. So Jews in the eyes of the world are connected to Israel. And you want to find out about this connection. And you start reading in the underground about the history of Jews. And suddenly you recognize your connection to Exodus from Egypt and to the continued fight of Jewish people for their right to be Jewish people. And you want to be part of this. You discover your identity. Then you have enough strength to start speaking the truth. First, you say you really don't want to live in this country. You want to go to Israel. And by this, all your life of lies changed. You'll be fired from your work. You'll be persecuted. But you say what you really believe in. So then you start speaking the truth about you, about other Jews, and about other people. So I became a fighter for human rights only because I found strength in my own identity. That suddenly there are values which are bigger than your personal life. And I meet very often with young people who are speaking about this problem, that, well, we don't want to be dealing only with Jews. We really want to make the world better place. And I say to them, for those who want, you will be able to make the world better only if you have strong roots. Only you have the source of strength. And there is no other source for your strength than being connected to your history, to your people, to your identity. And so identity, that's what gives you the strength to fight for the great ideas of Judaism and now the ideas of the world about value of human life and about equal rights for everybody.
When I came home from the Soviet Union with Audrey, and people asked me, how are these Jews doing that you met with, the refuseniks? I said, they are the only free people in the Soviet Union. Everybody in the Soviet Union is a slave, essentially, and a prisoner. And these people, even in prison, are free because they believe in something and they are ready to say it out loud. Like the Slepaks took a sheet and hung it out of their window on Gorky Street, which is like Park Avenue or Broadway. And it said, "We want to join our family in Israel." And for that, they got sent for 5 years to Siberia. But in Siberia, they were still free because they had their identity, thank God. Natan, the kids to whom you are speaking will, please God, some of them next year, some of them in 2 years and 3 years, and some in 4 years, they're going to go to college. And when they go to college and university, they're going to find anti-Semitism and anti-Israel. Can you give them some idea about how these two things are connected?
Yeah.
I know you have a wonderful mnemonic, a way of remembering it. 3 Ds. Yeah. Our kids in Ramaz never get a D, but it would be worth it for them to hear about your 3 Ds and what they mean.
Okay. Everybody agrees that anti-Semitism is a bad thing. Well, everybody except anti-Semites themselves. But when it comes to criticizing Israel, and when you say, wait, but don't you here cross the line, aren't you becoming anti-Semitic? I always heard from many politicians in the world, don't try to weaken, to undermine our right to criticize Israel by using this word anti-Semitism. And so, but at the same time, you see how more and more aggressive becomes and extreme attacks on Israel and unjust. And then I proposed such a test. I said, for 1,000 years, anti-Semites were doing what? Demonizing Israel, saying that they are the worst evil in the world, that they are spoiling the wells, that they are taking the blood from Christian babies and so on. So demonization of Jews was very, very important part of anti-Semitism. They were delegitimizing Jews when they were saying that, okay, that is Old Testament, now New Testament is replacing. Or was the extreme form of delegitimizing Jews was laws of Hitler. And they were applying double standard, very big different laws for Jews in Russia than for non-Jews. I'm not speaking about fascist Germany. So these are 3 Ds of anti-Semitism: demonization of Jews, delegitimization, double standard. And then I say, now let's look. If there is clear demonization of Israel, when this famous cartoon, which got all the prizes, but Prime Minister of Israel is eating Palestinian kids and the blood is dropping from his mouth. That's very typical demonization using the same symbols of religion. Or when Israel's right to exist is denied. And there are many times we can hear how Israel is an illegitimate state. Stalin in the past wrote an article that Jews are not a nation. And here today, very often politicians are explaining why the existence of Israel is illegitimate. Or double standard, different demands to Israel which are not applied to any other country. And what I was saying, that if these principles are applied against Israel and the same principles we applied against Jews, that is new anti-Semitism. And why 3Ds is good? Because think about 3D film. I think all of you had to the cinema, came to the cinema to see 3D film. And there are special spectacles which are given to see it. If you will not put these spectacles, you will not understand what's happening. You put it and suddenly you understand that is the tree, that is the man, that the sportsman running and so on. I say the same about criticism of Israel. Okay, you'll come to the campus, you'll hear a lot of attacks on Israel, and some people will saying, no, it's not anti-Semitism. We hate what Israel is doing, and then they start demonizing it, or denying its right to exist. And then put these 3D spectacles. Look at these eyes. Is there demonization of Israel? Are these people demanding from Israel things which they will never demand from America or from Egypt? And then if yes, that is anti-Semitism. So I'm glad that when I started 20 years ago, it was very difficult to influence on people, but now major Jewish organizations accepted it, and now and the American State Department accepted it, and international definition of anti-Semitism now includes, in fact, all these elements. So when you come to university, be very careful to listen what our enemies say. At the moment you will hear clear demonization of Israel or double standard of Israel, don't hesitate to call it by its name. That is anti-Semitism. These people cannot be friends of Jews.
Natan, you've written 2 books. Fear No Evil, which is the story of your whole experience in prison and before prison. And that was the most gripping book for me to read. And then The Case for Democracy, which President Bush read, and it impacted significantly on his statesmanship in the Middle East. Now I understand you finished another book. Can you just tell us about it? Because the whole Ramaz family is going to buy that book. Well, so tell us what it is, what its title is.
Yeah,
and
I just now finished the book which we are writing together with Gil Troy, who is a young American Canadian historian.
By the way, Natan, Gil Troy is the older brother of 2 Ramaz alumni. He always identifies himself as, I'm the Troy who didn't go to Ramaz.
The Ramaz.
Look how great he is. Can you imagine if he were an alumnus of the school too, how great he would be?
I didn't know that he didn't go to Ramaz. Maybe I would not agree that he would be my partner, but thanks God. And he was an excellent partner. But this book, I wanted to call it 999. 9 years in prison, 9 years in the government, 9 years in Jewish agency. Like 3 perspectives on relations between diaspora Jewry and Israel. But then the publisher said that it's too not serious. It's too light-minded. So it's called, seriously, it's called Never Alone, meaning that from the moment I discovered my identity, I felt never alone. Even in punishing cell in prison, I felt that all my Jewish people are with me. Of course, in the government or in Jewish agency, it's more difficult to feel yourself connected to all the Jews, but I kept this feeling. So the book is called Never Alone, but its 3 parts have 9 years in prison. Then the second part is called 9 years in the government, and third, 9 years of Jewish agency. And in fact, it's about all my life where I changed many hats and many positions. But in fact, I was dealing all the life only with one thing: how to build these bridges and connections between Jews of the world and the state of Israel. And I am very glad for the opportunity to share this experience. The book is launched officially on the 1st of September, but only now, already now, you can pre-order it in Amazon.
All right, I think we all...
By the way, when I'm speaking about Soviet Jewry, or how I saw the world in prison, you, Alex, Lookstein, you are playing, and your wife are playing important role in that imagined world, which happens to be not so imagined.
You mean we're in the book?
Yeah, you are in the book.
We're going to buy books for the whole family. Yeah. We're going to fill, and I'll treat the whole shul to that book. My heavens. Natan, thank you so much. It's Wednesday. We wish you a Shabbat Shalom. We hope that all the people who are in confinement now, starting with the two of us, we're not allowed to go out. And you too, to a certain extent, you're isolated again.
Until yesterday, we were also isolated. But the moment our Prime Minister said that now grandparents can meet their grandchildren with all the precaution, we immediately took our two older grandchildren and went to Dead Sea yesterday. So we broke our isolation.
Oh.
But we were the only crazy people on the Dead Sea, so it was still, we were alone.
Please give our regards to Racheli and to Chana and to the grandchildren. And you should all have a Shabbat Shalom, and Emir Hashem, we should all have a Geula Shlema, but first, a Geula Ketana, coronavirus.
I hope we all will defeat this enemy called coronavirus. And of course, our hearts are also with all the hardships of New York Jewish community. It was hit very hard. But I hope I'm sure we will overcome this, and we'll go out of this with a stronger feeling of our connection to our home and to our family.
Okay.
Amen.
Amen. Amen.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.